Good afternoon. I'd like to call to order the Public Works Committee meeting for Tuesday, September 15th, 2015. First order of business is the roll call and determination of quorum. Please, Brenda, if you would.
Doyle?
Here.
Estes? Roberts? Weifenbach? Right. We have a quorum.
Thank you, Brenda. Next order of business is to adopt the agenda. Are there any changes requested? If not, I would look for a motion to adopt. A motion by Wright.
Second.
And a second by Roberts. Is there any discussion? Seeing none, all those in order are in favor of adopting the agenda?
Aye.
Thank you. All opposed? Agenda is adopted. Now is a time for general public comment, which is a time for members of the public to discuss or express concerns to the committee on any issue not limited to items on the agenda. Action will not be taken at the meeting on any issue not on the agenda except by placement on the agenda by unanimous vote of the aldermen present. I do have no general public comment forms. I do have multiple non-consent calendar forms. Seeing anybody for general public comment? Okay, we'll move on to consent items number 1 through 11. Public comment is now open. Once again, no speaker request forms for consent items 1 through 11. Okay, we're closing public comment. Would any alderman like to remove item 1 through 11 for separate consideration? Alderman Roberts, please.
Number 7, please.
Yes, sir. Any others? All right, seeing none, I'd look for a motion to adopt the balance of the consent calendar.
Second.
A motion by Estes, second by Weifenbach to approve items 1 through 11 with the exception of number 7. Seeing no discussion, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All opposed? Consent calendar is adopted with the exception of item number 7. Item number 7 is the agreement between the City of Rapid City and Black and Beach Corporation for master planning professional services for the water utility system master plan update and model recalibration in the amount of $1,365,586. I will turn the floor over to Alderman Roberts, please.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I just have a question or two for Terry.
Mr. Walterstorff, please.
Terry, can you tell me the last time that we did a master plan of this type?
Yeah, I believe 2008 was when the last master plan was done. I don't know that it was necessarily it didn't necessarily include all of the scope of what we're dealing with here, but it was somewhat similar.
And typically, how often do we do a master plan like this? I mean, that was less than 10 years ago.
I'd say typically about at least every 10 years you should update that plan.
And if you read this, it says it's a 100-year plan, so I'm just kind of wondering why you would update a 100-year plan every 10 years. What's changes as far as?
Reality, a lot of things do change. Where the development's occurring changes in a 10-year window. We've even noticed a substantial change in the usage of customers in the last 10 years. We certainly haven't seen the peak day demands that we were seeing back in the early 2000s even though we have increased the number of customers. So, and you're seeing that trend nationally, where the quantity of water people are using on a day-to-day basis are going down due to conservation measures. And on the flip side, you'll also see a lot of times that the requirement for fire flows are going up as fire code standards continue to increase and get better. So there's a lot of moving parts to the system, and it's good to keep on top of it because we do invest a lot of money every year into our system, both the expansion and the reconstruction of the existing mains.
And just one last question, Terry. Under the new master plan that we just did a few years ago, or a year ago, whatever it was any of this covered in that master plan, or is this separate from the master plan?
You mean the comprehensive plan?
Comprehensive plan.
The comprehensive plan did not really deal with the master planning of the water system or the wastewater system.
Thank you very much.
Okay, we'll go to Alderman Wright.
Question for Terry also. In this master plan, I assume we'll be looking at how we're going to fund oversize and development extensions and that kind of stuff. Or has that been looked at, and how well has that been received?
This master plan does not encompass the rates. The rate study would follow after this. This is going to tell us what we need to be doing for our system, what parts of our system we should be programming for replacement, scheduling of those. The rate study will follow up after this. And keep in mind, there's a couple things that will come along with this. We will also do a master plan update for the wastewater system. I would anticipate we will do the rate study for the wastewater and the water at the same time. I think it'd be beneficial to look at, assuming there's rate increases, which normally there would be, we would look at those together.
Anything else, Alderman Wright? We'll go to Alderman Weifenbach, please.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I think I beat my colleague to the button there, but I tried to get my arms around this in a short period of time. I had this ability to do it, and I'm not sure that I quite understand it. I mean, I was part of the whole council when we redid the whole water system back in, I think it was 08 or 09. I can't remember quite for sure, but I can't get my arms around this part of it. So I'm not exactly sure how I can.
Do you have a
It's gonna take me some
specific
more.
question, or would you like me to?
Madam Chair, I'll yield to the floor. Thank you.
Mr. Estes, you were in. Would you like to? Thank you.
Well, thank you, Madam Chair. I'll make a motion to approve if I can get a second and keep the floor. Just,
A motion by Estes and a second by Wright. Brenda.
you know, we did discuss this at the agenda review, and it is just an overview of the plant and the facilities, and I believe got a mental block on Mountain View, that water treatment plant that's in the study. Terry.
Part of this will look at the capacity requirements for the Mountain View Water Treatment Plant, or the upgrade of it, replacement of it, both in what we'd call more of a short term and ultimately the long term. We're also going to take an additional look at the exact location of where that plant should be located. We will consider whether it should be located to a different location if there's cost benefits with doing that.
Thank you. I guess right now is all we're doing is send it on to council. And we've got some time to do some further homework, so I'll yield. Thanks.
All right, I do have a motion and a second for preliminary approval of item number 7. Is there any further discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor?
Aye.
All opposed? Aye. Motion carries with 1 no by Alderman Roberts. Thank you, gentlemen. We are moving on to the non-consent items, numbers 12 through 16. Public comment is now open. And I will start with item number 13, Mr. Alex Kalesia. Hope I'm saying that right. Will you run the clock for me, please?
Good afternoon, Council. I'm Alex Kalesia with Butler Machinery here in Rapid City. And item 13, I would just like to reiterate that we do meet all specifications for that bid, and we'd like you to go ahead and give that a final approval and move it on. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Kalesia. We'll now go to Bill Freytag. Same item, number 13, please.
My name is Bill Freytag, 3821 Brook Street. What I'm going to ask you to do is throw out all the bids and to start over, because I feel that the specs were slanted so that only one bidder could prevail. For instance, what was deemed critical was a setting on a thermostat. All the bidders had air conditioning in their units, but you got to have a dial that says a number on it instead of just a red line or a green line you bring together to set. And so that's critical, and that's supposed to cost me $9,000 as a taxpayer, because the net bids to the taxpayer was $9,000 less. Then you have stuff like the cycle, and the 9/10 of a second different in the cycle, when it means absolutely nothing, because that cycle is more applies to loading a truck than it does to lifting the bucket a few feet and letting it back down and pushing garbage. And at the same time, they wanted to make an issue out of 9 seconds there, or 9/10 of a second there. They neglect the 52 seconds that Butler's machine needs to open the hood, where it only takes about, as long as it takes you to open a car door, is the same amount of time it takes to open for the John Deere. So the walkthrough in the morning can be done 52 seconds quicker getting the hood open, and then it takes another 52 seconds to close it. Now, I don't think that's critical, and so I wouldn't put that in there at all. But the 9/10 of a second isn't critical. The 72 degrees or the 32 degrees that you can read a number instead of just set a dial is not critical. But some things are critical, like the tip over. And on the tip over, the John Deere is 6,000 pounds better if you're just straight. And if you turn it, you articulate it in the middle, the John Deere's 3,500 pounds better. Well, I would kind of think that's critical, but that's left out. Then you go to the traction control, not in there. But if you're skidding and you're on slimy stuff out at the dump and you need all your traction you can get on the John Deere, you just kick it in, it goes. But if you're not doing 12.5 miles an hour on the Cat, you can't kick that in. So I could go through all of these, and 9 out of 10 of them, or 7 out of 8 of them, however you want to count it, are not critical. They were just set so that the only person that could meet these. Here's another one, a 1-inch span on the radiator. The John Deere has 7 tubes, and the Cat has 6. So they set the spec at 6. You know what? The guys at John Deere didn't even know how many tubes they had. It's not in any of their literature. It's so minute, they had to go back to the factory and engineering to even get the number. It was just a spec that was set so that only one manufacturer and one company could do it. And I could go through more of these. There's lots of them in there. I'm going to send you some emails where I'm going to send them all out. The final thing is I don't like this trade-in deal. So we send out a spec that includes a trade-in, and then we tell them, you know, we might accept your trade-in and we might not. We don't know for sure, but put the trade-in numbers. And then as soon as all the bids come in and you can see the trade-ins, and Butler doesn't get the trade-in number, they're too high, they throw it out. Oh, we're not talking about trade-ins anymore. You can't even do it. And according to Pauline, who says the state law doesn't allow you, until I looked at the state law, and it absolutely does, there's just so many things wrong here that I think it's unfair to the public to stab us $9,000. I'm going to encourage you to throw this all out, rebid it with a fair spec. Make sure the specs are done fairly.
We'll look forward for that email.
Okay, thank you.
Appreciate it. Moving on to item number 14, Mr. Greg Convolin.
Thank you, council members. My name is Greg Convolin. I'm with Jenner Equipment Company. And this is in reference to item 14 on the purchase of 2 new current model skid steer loaders. We would just ask that you would consider Jenner Equipment on the 2 new loaders. We are offering a larger machine, more lift capacity, more horsepower. As it states, we don't meet all of the criteria that was asked for, but neither does the dealership that was awarded the bid or referred the bid. So we just ask that you would take Jenner Equipment into consideration on the 2 new skid steer loaders. Thank you.
Mr. Convolin. On item number 16, Ms. Janelle Fink, please.
Good afternoon. My name is Janelle Fink. I'm with Fisk Land Surveying, and I'm here on behalf of Atlantis LLC. I'm also here with owner representative Paul Bradsky. And I would like to visit with you today about item 16, which is a request to waive a requirement to install sidewalk along the South I-90 Service Road as well as Elkvale Road, as it abuts the property that's known right now as the Fairfield and La Quinta and Watiki Water Park. Per the slide that you're seeing here, there's a red line that kind of indicates where sidewalk would be installed along Elkvale and then extend over on the service road. I did provide a letter. I don't know if you've had a chance to look at it, but I'll kind of briefly go through that. The first item was that we had requested to waive the sidewalk along the service road as it was in a different city jurisdiction. I see by the staff report that they are recommending approval of that, so we're in concurrence with that conclusion there. The second item is we feel that the interchange that was constructed is comparatively recent interchange, and while there are sidewalks on the interchange itself, the approaching north and south wasn't constructed with sidewalks in mind. There's no bench provision there, there's no sidewalk preserved there, or an area that's reserved for that within that construction. So that basically tells me that the DOT at that time didn't want sidewalks or wasn't interested in sidewalks, or they would have made that provision, or they would have installed them like they did on the interchange. The next item was that the nearest sidewalks that we're looking at, there's a very small portion directly north that extends to the interchange, but other than that, you're looking at south on Cheyenne Boulevard, on either east or west side of Elkvale. There's no connective sidewalk anywhere on Elkvale Road that would come from the La Quinta and go south towards what would be the Arby's or Cheyenne Boulevard there. Some of the other recent construction, the Dakota Steakhouse, which is on the west side just opposite this, does not have sidewalk, nor does the Comfort Inn. So there were either exceptions or variances granted for those items there. Sidewalk wasn't required when Cheyenne Boulevard was constructed. It's on Cheyenne Boulevard, but it isn't required or wasn't installed along where, the service station or Arby's or McDonald's. Again, there's no sidewalk along the north-south corridor there. And it would be hard to imagine that they would seek or want sidewalk extending south on Elkvale. I mean, this is a highway. Speed limits are 45, 50 miles an hour, 55, 60 miles an hour as you move along through there. There's, again, the roads aren't constructed with that in mind. There's not appropriate shoulders or separation from the traffic. I'd also like to point out that the grades are a little bit of an issue here as well. I know that topography maps are always a little difficult to read, but the tighter the contours, the steeper it is. You can see on our side of the road it's much steeper than it is on the west side. And again, there was no sidewalk required to be installed there. And last and most importantly is that there is no pedestrian passway on that overpass bridge where the train goes under. If we put a sidewalk there, everybody that enters that is going to be directed directly onto the driving way or surface of the road as it crosses the bridge. And that is an inherently unsafe use. And so we would request that you waive the requirement for sidewalks in both instances at this time, and we'd be available for any further questions that you might have. Thank you.
Ms. Fink. Seeing no further public comment on items 12 through 16, I will now close public comment. We'll move on to item number 12. Item number 12 is a request by Dream Design International, Inc. to consider an application for a vacation of a section line highway for property generally described as being located southeast of East Minnesota Street. I have a motion to approve by Weifenbach, a second by Roberts. Any discussion? Seeing none, all in favor?
Aye.
All opposed? Seeing no opposition, the item carries unanimously. Item number 13, approve the award of a base bid without trade-in on one new current model year articulated loader, open September 1st, 2015, to the lowest responsible bidder, Butler Machinery, in the amount of $376,300. Go to Alderman Estes, please.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I move to award this to Butler Cat in the amount of $376,300, and if I get a second, I'd like to keep the floor.
I have a motion by Estes, second by Alderman Wright. Thank you. Mr. Estes, you have the floor.
Thank you. As I look at this and I read the specs that were sent out, and I have a lot of respect. I respect Mr. Freitag's comments, but on page 3 of the detailed specifications 01-08 at the bottom, it says a contract will be awarded to the bidder submitting the lowest responsible bid meeting the exact requirements of this specification. And that's exactly what we have with this piece of equipment by Butler Cat. It's $300 higher than the other one. I guess in my mind well within my purview here, representing my ward, that I'm going to spend an extra $300 for a piece of equipment that meets the specifications. And I'll leave it at that. Thanks.
Thank you, Mr. Estes. We will go over to Ron Weifenbach, please.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I had a couple questions for Mr. Murbach.
Mr. Murbach, if you would approach the podium. Thank you, sir. Go ahead.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I'd like to know who wrote the specs for the obviously this came forward on a state bid. You guys wanted to buy this particular item without bidding it, and then the specifications were written. So who wrote the specifications?
Our department, myself and my staff put these specifications together.
So reading, there was another item on here that wasn't sent to the lower bidder, and they didn't meet the specifications either. I'm trying to understand, get my arms around the differences in some of these critical specifications as I see them. I've learned a lot about equipment in the last 4 days, and I agree to some extent that it's not our duty up here to write specifications, but it is our duty to understand how the process works. And it seems as though, from my layman's point of view, that the specs were written particularly so one piece of equipment could meet them and not. I know in the past, the city has been very flexible with wanting to get as much bang for their buck, willing to, just like anyone when they purchase a car or a piece of equipment, they're willing to give some to take some and those types of things. And so I've done a little research, as Mr. Freitag had pointed out earlier, about differences in some of the equipment. And some of the the critical points, don't have my arms around them. And can you explain to us how each of those plays a factor in the decision-making process of what's critical and what's not critical? Because if it's critical or safety issues, I understand that. But if it's overall, there could be a cost savings. When you guys bid this, it was bid as with a trade-in. If I go to a car dealer and I'm trading in my car, the net bottom price is what I'm going to pay. So truly, there's a $9,000 difference here if that particular thing is traded in. And when it's bid out as a trade-in, dealers or whoever work that into their bottom line numbers. It's all, their bottom line number is what they're going to get, what they're going to make. If they give you more for a trade-in, they're anticipating they're going to get more out of that trade-in. In this particular item, it is so specific as to some of the critical criteria. I guess I'd like to understand why those are critical.
If you are referring to the exceptions that the other bidders did not meet, if you read the memo that I put together, I believe there were 9 items that if we're looking at the large loader now, which we are recommending that be awarded to Butler Machinery. Some of the critical items that we had are related a lot to safety. Now realize when you read this, I highlighted the critical things in bold in my memo to you. So some of the critical things, for example, the number of fins on the radiator is very critical. We are not a typical construction site. With what we have at the landfill in the material recovery facility, working with very fine dusts and powders in the yard waste areas, it is critical that we have things that we can work and we can maintain. If we don't have the radiator set up just correctly there, we've got plugged radiators, we've got overheated machineries, we've got a lot of things there. So those are critical items. One of the other things is maintenance and safety of our operators. These machines get dirty. When we put our specifications together, we wanted the safety of the operators, both in the entry to the vehicle and to the ability to clean windows, do simple maintenance procedures to have those items that would make sense for them to be safe when they work and they maintain those vehicles. So that platform on the front of the vehicle was also a critical item. So that's, again, there's a very, very detailed specification in here. Just getting a machine with 4 wheels and a bucket does not necessarily mean it will fit our needs. Our needs are much different than, say, the street department and loaders that they just ordered. Again, due to our environment, due to our needs, we want to have this equipment around for a long time. And the ease of maintenance for our operators and the ease of operation and longevity are critical things for the loaders.
How do we, Mr. Murbach, how do we determine the specific ones that we're going to choose, though? I mean, when I'm looking at it, like some of my councilmen said up here, we're not in the game of saying whether this meets the criteria or not. I guess that's a fact. Mm-hmm. But I'm on the understanding of how this criteria is so narrowed, so specific, that only one piece of equipment meets it. I've been on the council for 5 years and haven't seen this happen before, and especially in the case of how it happened. We want to buy it on bid, that don't work. We do a trade-in, all of a sudden somebody's $9,000 lower. Now we don't want the trade-in, but everything points to something just not right there. So you got to understand my concern about how this happens, because in the end, I'm here for the taxpayers to save them money, do whatever. But on the other hand, if these items are that critical, if the fins per square inch are that critical in the operation at the dump, then I think that should have been very spelled out. I mean, I know that when the city streets do a bid on a piece of machinery, they'll go out kind of ahead of time, because there's only 3 people bidding on this. They kind of know what their equipment is. But I mean, I did some research on the tipping capacity, and I think Mr. Freitag had mentioned that earlier, that there's a difference, the 6,000 pounds for a John Deere versus it has 6,000 pounds more ability to lift in a position that's not articulated. Is that not critical for the machine to tip? I mean, the differential lock speed that he had mentioned, those types of things, are they not critical items? I mean, are they not?
Well, they definitely are critical items, and that was one of the things that was specified. The one bidder has automatic, the other one has manual, where you have to manually engage that drive. So again, these were all things that we went through item by item to put together that fit our needs for our specific application.
So the control panel that does not make a clicking noise, how does that become critical, Mr.?
Again, from an operator standpoint, to know that it is engaged by not just flipping a switch and not knowing, this is something that is important to the operator to know that he doesn't have to get out and check. We can determine that piece of equipment is engaged by knowing we don't just have a simple light, we also have a verbal indication that piece of equipment or that angle or that locking in that new bucket is engaged.
I'm definitely not worried about the other items you wrote on here, like cubic inches. Those aren't critical. I mean, because if you look at cubic inches, you use that as a specification. When you talk about net horsepower, it looks as though the John Deere has 303 net horsepower and the Cat has 276 net horsepower, yet the criteria is talking about cubic inches. Hydraulic cycle times, 11.2 versus 10.3, those types of things. I'm still not sold that this wasn't specifically written to match one particular piece of equipment. So I have a hard time with that, and I'm not sure how to get around that. I mean, but I'm not operating the equipment either, though. But it just seems, as the sequence of events takes place, that we're maybe not. I mean, do we have a policy? Madam Chair, I'll ask one more question.
Please do.
Do we have a policy in place that when we do these bids, that how we handle these? I mean, how the specification is written? I mean, it seems like I've never experienced this situation before, so I'm just, I would ask what your guys' policy is. Do you, on a friendly note, let them know ahead of time kind of what you're looking for and what's important, what's not important?
We did ask each of the potential bidders for their specification pages, and we used that to put together the specifications that we did eventually publish. So we went out, we did go out, we did get there, and there were some folks that did not bid on any of this equipment, but again, we had all of the local manufacturers represented, at least in the information that we had.
But do we have any way to determine, I mean, we've had the John Deere equipment for the last 30, 40 years that I know of. Madam Chair, I'll ask that question.
Please do. Would you like to direct it towards Mr. Murbach? or
Yes,
Mr.
thank you.
Wolterstorff?
Your question, I'm sorry.
Could you repeat it for him, please?
We've had the John Deere equipment, so I guess how do we determine what's critical and what's not critical if we have both the books with specifications in them? Do we have like a criteria that says, or do we have performance history that says these items are critical, these items aren't critical? I mean, because it truly eliminates particular people from bidding. These people who came in $9,000 less have no opportunity to meet your critical criteria because you had both criteria books in front of you when you wrote the specifications. How do we determine which items are critical, which ones aren't?
We do the best we can when we put those specifications together based on our needs, based on our work history with that. We went way over and above on all this equipment this year with a 5-year bumper-to-bumper warranty. That is definitely stepping outside the box to make sure that, you know, we get equipment that can be maintained. It'll hold our suppliers accountable. Although everybody met that, these were things that we looked at as being critical.
Right. I'm not interested in whether they meet the specs or not at this point. I think that's a moot point. That's part of the process. But also part of the process is how the specs are put together. Can people fairly and honestly compete for the city's business? I guess that would be a question. You're comfortable with the fact that you put together the specs so that John Deere and RDO, Butler, and Jenner could all compete for this piece of equipment within your comfortable range of critical criteria?
I am, and my staff are comfortable with what we had sent out there and put out for bid.
Thank you. I just
Thank
want
you, Madam Chair.
to interject just for a moment, if I may, Mr. Weifenbach, to make sure that we are staying on topic. And I think it is important that the questions and the public comment, everything that's been brought to light, I think they're very fair questions. I mean, the point blank question is, are you writing these specs for a specific piece of equipment? I don't think anyone's asked it as directly as I just did. And although that is not really germane whether or not we approve this so that you can carry on with your business, I am, I guess, appreciative that the committee is asking these questions. I would much rather have that vetted out here than take up an hour at council. So.
And to answer your question, yes, we will write those specs around a piece of equipment towards what we feel is best for our needs at our facility and for the city.
Thank you, Mr. Murbach. Did you have anything else, Mr. Weifenbach?
I had something, Madam Chair, but I slipped my mind completely. But I appreciate, I mean, I think I thought I asked that question pretty clearly, but I understand that the best time sometimes to just nail it out. And I had one more question, because I still don't understand the trade-in process. I mean, there was a bid out with a trade-in. They came back. Net price was $9,000 less. Now we're not going to trade the piece of equipment in. What are we going to do with it?
We have a lot of options for that. We can hang on, maintain that equipment. Please realize that in those specifications, it was clearly stated that, you know, we had the right to accept that. That was bid out as an alternate. It was something that we considered in looking at the prices, the options for that trade-in. It was determined by staff that we'd be in our best interest that we not trade those in at those time. We have declared those surplus. We have different options that we can look to surplus that in the future, if not as a trade-in down the line. But again, that was not specifically set as
I understand
part of
that,
the bid. It was bid as an alternate, and we elected not to accept that alternate.
So it was two different bids then, or is it one bid?
It was bid separately in there. There was a base bid and then a bid for the trade-in. So it was a separate price. It wasn't bid as,
Okay.
It was bid as an alternate, I guess, to look at it.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I have no more questions.
Thank you. And just a housekeeping point, Mr. Wolterstorff, I do see you in the queue. However, when a question is directed, I will call upon you. And we'll go to Alderman Roberts, please.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Carl, while you're there, I do have one question for you. Did I understand a minute ago when you said that you write the specifications around a certain piece of equipment?
If that piece of equipment meets our needs, if that's the critical issues that we do, yes.
Thank you very much. I appreciate that. Now I have a question for our City Attorney, Joel Landine.
Please.
Joel, I have some very serious concerns about that. If we're writing our specifications around a certain piece of equipment, if those specifications kick out the other bidders, then why are we even bidding equipment out? We might as well just give it to the person that we want. And I know that there's people in this room that would be concerned that that is actually bid fixing according to the state of South Dakota. And if I have those concerns and some other people have those concerns, what do we do if we have those concerns? How do we investigate that? How do we find out if we are following state law? Because if we are writing a bid that's so specific that only one piece of equipment will follow that bid, there is no reason to have a bid process. Thank you.
Landine, would you care to reply?
Yeah, I don't know how much. I think that it's an issue we need to look into. The problem with bid law is, on the one end of the spectrum, do you want, just say we want a front end loader with 4 wheels, and when you start getting in, the equipment is also different now. It's hard to write a spec that sometimes includes everything, but obviously the more detailed you get, the more likely it is to end up with a certain piece of equipment. And I don't know that the landfill is probably the only one that does that there's equipment and things. I think to look back, this purchase wasn't originally recommended to be a bid. It was only bid out because it was, the council essentially directed that it be bid out. They were trying to purchase the equipment off the national contract, which is a legal way to purchase the equipment. I can take a look at what the bid requirements are, but there is inevitably going to be some flexibility in writing the specs, and that may eliminate some pieces of equipment. It's going to be difficult to write them so you can get every single piece of equipment. If they are writing it, though, as Alderman Roberts said, to specifically get one piece of equipment, then that's clearly something we need to take a look at and whether that's appropriate. If it could be written so that maybe you don't capture every piece of equipment, but as many as you can and still get features you need. The question is, when you write a spec, and Alderman Weifenbach has been focusing on this, what is really critical? What do we need to spec? For instance, we were recommended to approve the bid on the piece of equipment that did not have a factory installed backup camera. And I agree with that. What difference does it make if it's factory installed or if it's installed by the dealer, as long as it has a backup camera? Obviously, having a backup camera is the critical piece. And if they had decided to award the bid to somebody who didn't have a backup camera, I would have a lot of concern with that. But at the same time, then it begs the question, well, if having it factory installed is not a critical element, then why was it spec'd as factory installed? But at the time somebody wrote the spec, they probably didn't even consider that. So, I don't know if you've ever seen the specs, but they're pretty detailed. So, that may be something that we need to look at, not just for the landfill, but citywide. I don't think there is a written policy. I think certain people within the various departments and divisions write the specs, and I don't know that there's necessarily even uniformity among the police department, fire department, public works, and the various divisions in public works on how the specs are written. And frankly, that would be another reason to potentially look at, and something we've discussed for a long time but never done, is having a unified fleet and having one person responsible for the entire city rather than having 5, 6, 7 people throughout the city that all write specs. But I agree, it's something that we need to take a look at, and we'll take a look at that and I guess notify the mayor and the council what our thoughts are as far as how this should proceed into the future.
Thank you, Mr. Landine.
Thank you very much, Joel. I appreciate that very much. I think the thing that worries me the most about this is, in my mind, if we're, and no offense to you, Carl, I know that this has probably been done for years, but if we're writing the specifications around a certain piece of equipment, in my mind, why is there even a bidding process? So thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Roberts. We'll move on to Alderman Wright, please.
Thank you, Chair. I want to qualify this by saying I did this for 23 years as a city employee, and I did it for about 12 years as my own employer. I bought machinery from every single dealer that's involved with this by myself as an individual years ago, and also as an official with the City of Rapid City. My first concern on this issue was that I'm not sure my philosophy, which I think is probably a good one, at least in most part. When we're looking for machinery, we always look for something that would do the job and do it safely and productively and safely and affordably. And I also had a philosophy that we have several very good, every single dealer on Deadwood Avenue is a good dealer. They all produce or market excellent machinery. They're all businesses located in the City of Rapid City, and I always had the approach, rather than going out for a selective purchase excluding other dealers, I wanted to give everybody that was a taxpayer in Rapid City or a business that gave business to Rapid City a chance to bid. I think that's where I feel we crossed the line here. Proprietary specs have their place when we're buying a piece of machinery or buying something that has to do a specific job, and the only one that I can remember in the landfill operations was the auger scraper, and that was a situation where we did write it specifically around Caterpillar 627E auger scraper twice. And the reason was no one else made it. Others people wanted to get in on it, so Terex and so forth, but they were not the same weight of machine. They didn't have the auger and so forth. That was a proprietary spec that worked. Well, when it came to things like motor graders and loaders, crawlers, that kind of stuff, that several manufacturers make top-notch equipment. Some are better than others in certain areas. We always tried to go to a performance-based spec. Will it do the job? Will it load trucks safely without tipping over? What's the chassis weight? What's the horsepower? And we were always trying to set it up so that we could get as many bids as possible and not exclude somebody that could bid it reasonably. And we, of course, would exclude people that couldn't meet it or were giving us junk. I just think that this whole situation is unfortunate because I think it, well, maybe brought to attention that we need to relook at how we do business. That's probably true. I at least, and I'd be happy to share my experiences. You know, I hate to say, well, in the old days, but it's true. In the old days, we did it by the book, I think, and we were successful. I think there's been a slight slip here, and at least it kind of has that look. I'm sorry. And I think basically by going to exclusionary bid, and then Caterpillar's an outstanding machinery, Butler Machinery is an outstanding dealership. It's not that. I'm not picking on them at all. But I think when we go to an exclusionary bid, for instance, and we try to buy a specific machinery when there's others that can provide this machine adequately to our business, I don't like it. And I'm going to leave it at that. I support the award to Butler this time because it's within $300. But Terry, Carl, the entire city, take a hard look at what you're doing. You can, I think, dangerously close to creating a real bad problem here. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Wright. Just a reminder to the committee, we do have a motion by Estes and a second by Wright to approve this item. We'll go to Alderman Estes, please.
Thank you. I respect everything everybody said up here. The reason I made the motion, and I want to go over it one more time, is Butler's the only one that meets the spec. We can talk about the trade-in, but right now the company that has the other trade-in doesn't meet the spec as written, and the way this went down, or the way this happened, is we instructed Carl to put these things out for bid. Now, everybody up here has a right to ask what specs are critical, but the time time and place for that has come and gone. The time to get involved in that was before it went out, if we wanted it. It doesn't say, these are the specs, give us your best shot, and we'll all get together and decide which ones are and aren't critical. And so that, in my mind, as far as big laws and the way we wrote this, that's the only way we can award it. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Estes. Now, since everyone's spoken, I think I will take the opportunity just for a moment. I see Public Works Director is in the queue. We're really, really trying to adhere to rules since it's been kind of Wild West up here for the last X number of years. And one of those is that, staff doesn't really get to talk unless called upon. So I will ask you a question. I have no idea if it's relevant to what you were itching to say. But my question for you is, Mr. Landine commented that he doesn't believe we do have a process or a policy in place for speccing these types of equipment, and I would ask you if you concur with that, or if in fact you do believe, as a Public Works Director in your department, that we do.
We do not have a policy regarding that as far as I know. I can tell you I'll expand on it real quick if you'll allow me to. In the Public Works Department, I think we operate pretty similar to most of the other departments in the city. I'm going to go out on a limb and say that. But essentially, what happened here and what happens in most cases is the supervisors and the operators who run these pieces of equipment are the ones that we put in charge of writing the specifications. They're the ones that know best. Not me sitting in an office here at CSAC building. It's the operators and supervisors. They know what equipment works for them. So I give them the latitude and the ability to write those specifications. Certainly we don't want to exclude everybody with the exception of one person, but generally speaking, what happens is you test drive the equipment to see which ones work best for you, whether it's a street sweeper, a sewer jet vac truck, a loader at the landfill, a motor grader, and we write specs around the equipment that we like, because it's the stuff the operators feel comfortable with. It's stuff the mechanics like to work on. It's what works best for us. That's how we write the specifications. And there was a comment made earlier that this has never happened before. I'm going to tell you, that's not the case. It happens all the times with equipment bids. We have vendors that come to us after we open bids, and they have exceptions, and they come to us and they try to explain why their exception is not a big deal. It happens all the time. There's sometimes that we agree with them, which has been the case in some of these bids. We say, you're right, that is an exception that is not something that's detrimental to what we're buying. And we're able to work around that. I'm going to give you an example. When we specify, street department spec'd out some motor graders, and I believe one of the specifications was that it had a steering wheel. Well, we have one supplier that doesn't have steering wheels in their motor graders. They're hand-operated pieces of equipment. So what we do is spec around a certain piece of equipment. We try not to tone it down so close that only one person can bid it. But that's how the spec writing works.
Okay, I appreciate that, but I will challenge you as a Public Works Director to be considerate of the fact that likes versus necessities are two different matters entirely when dealing with taxpayer money, and I would ask you to keep that in the forefront of your mind. And we'll go to Alderman Weifenbach, please.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and I appreciate you holding to Robert's Rules of Orders, because that was one of the arenas that I have a hard time with as we go on and on and on about an opinion. And Madam Chair, I want to ask Mr. Landine if we need to direct him to check the state bid law process and our policy process, or if that's something he will just do.
Mr. Landine, could you respond, please?
That is something we'll just do.
I appreciate that, and but I had a question for Mr. Freitag if he wants to answer on policy here. I know you made some comments versus on the policy of this, and I wanted to ask you about your thoughts on that policy as it's been discussed.
Thank you. Okay. Yeah, thank you. Listen, I think this. I like Caterpillars, I like John Deere's. Both are good companies. Butler's a good company. RDO is a good company. Everything Jerry said was right, except he doesn't care about slanting the spec, but, you know, in the future, let's not do it, but we're gonna do it, okay, this time, and I'm just gonna blink. Well, I'm not gonna blink. You know what, if Carl wants a cat, then go into business by yourself, where it's your money and not the taxpayers' money, and buy the cat. If it's the taxpayers' money, you've got to follow, there's a reason you wanna bid it. It's to protect the taxpayer. And if the taxpayer's not getting protected here, the taxpayer's getting hosed $9,000 because the net bid by RDO was $9,000 less.
Mr. Freitag, if you could keep your comments specific.
I appreciate it,
Mr.
Ms. Freitag, I appreciate it, because I want to add something to that, and I appreciate that answer. It was set up from the council. When this thing came forward, it was stopped by a council person because it came out on a state purchase. There was going to be no bid. It came back with a bid, and then we said, okay, what's the criteria? So today is the day that we have this discussion. Today is the day we start this discussion as we have the information in front of us. I had not had the information in front of me ahead of time. I do not follow up individually, but when there's a policy or a process that I think needs to be looked at, that's when I am going to delve into it. So I want to be clear about that. This information wasn't given me ahead of time. When we asked for it, the council requested the criteria that wasn't met on the other project. Also, we are approving tonight another piece of equipment that didn't meet the specifications either, so I don't know where the argument keeps coming in about specifications, and we got to decide. I mean, and I agree with what everybody said in here. Caterpillar probably is the one I'm most familiar with it. I am more familiar with the Caterpillar products than anybody's, but that's not my point. My point is we have a process that we're going to be held accountable to our constituents for, and our mission is to make sure we get the best price on the best product, and we don't, like Alderman, the chair has said here, that we don't get the opportunity to purchase this stuff because we feel like we want to purchase it. We're using taxpayer dollars. If I was in business for myself and I owned a construction company, I could do what I wanted to do. I could bid it out, and I would, but it's important that we play by the rules. I think Mr. Landine will be looking up the state rules, as I seen him cringing here earlier about some of the comments that were made. So I think that will help us moving forward. I'm not going to support this item tonight. You'll go to the council, and the council can weigh in on theirs. But I'm telling you, today was the day that we had to have this discussion. That's why we have the meetings here. The information's been given to us. I rely on my department heads to make sure that they're following proper protocol. It's not my job, only when it seems to be outside of the realm, and everything that is lined up to this point and I still feel that there's something that we're not getting right here, and we need to get a handle on it. So thank you. I'll yield the floor.
Mr. Weifenbach, thank you, Mr. Freitag. We'll go to Alderman Wright.
I want to correct the record. I never said slant the spec, period. The motion was made to the lowest bidder that met all specifications, and I seconded it, and I stand by that. And I don't appreciate someone putting words in my mouth. Thank you.
Thank you for the clarification. We'll move on to Alderman Roberts, please.
Thank you very much, Madam Chair, and I won't be supporting this either at this moment or this bid. But I do want to. I respect what Alderman Estes has to say, but I disagree totally with what he said as far as we need. If we're going to debate this, it has to be before it goes out to bid. Well, we as council members cannot find and sit with everybody when they're putting these specs together for bid. The only time that we can find that there may be a problem is after it happens. So I will not support this. I would love to see this thrown out. I would love to see a little, not quite so tight of a bid, so maybe some other people would have an opportunity. But hopefully going forward, we can find a way to correct this. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Roberts. I would concur with that statement. And we do have a motion on the floor to approve. It is seconded unless anyone wants to submit a substitute motion to just move to council without recommendation pending Mr. Landine's information. That is what we have on the floor. Any further discussion? Seeing none, all in favor of approving and awarding this bid?
Aye.
All opposed?
Aye.
And we have a tie, so that means I get to vote, which is wonderful because I would like the state bid information before I know that. So if this is a denial, Mr. Landine, then chair votes no. Thank you. We're moving on to item number 14, approve award of base bid with no trade-in for 2 new current model year skid steer loaders. Bid date opened September 1st, 2015. This is going to the lowest responsible bidder of RDO Equipment Company in the amount of $101,000. We'll go to Alderman Weifenbach, please.
Thank you, Madam Chair. And I will move approval on this item. Obviously, it's the lowest responsible bidder, but it doesn't meet the bid criteria, but I will move approval.
A motion by Weifenbach, second by Roberts. Please continue. Any discussion? Alderman Estes, please.
Listen, when you draw a line in the sand, you got to draw a line in the sand, so I've got to vote no. Thanks.
Sometimes I wish we had theme music up here. I can just hear the Wild West. That'd be great. Any further discussion? Mr. Wright, looks like the game's going to continue.
I'm going to vote no because I think this needs full discussion at council also. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Wright. Any further discussion? Motion on the floor is to approve. Seeing no further discussion, all in favor? Aye. All opposed?
Here.
Oh, we didn't get all the votes. Could we do a roll call, please?
Estes. Roberts. Weifenbach.
Aye.
Wright. Doyle.
Might as well be consistent, no?
Motion failed.
Thank you, Brenda, appreciate it.
Motion, I agree with you. We should have voted through. We'll discuss it.
And who would have thought Public Works could be so much fun? All right, moving on to item number 15, request from Renner and Associates for Fox LLC for a variance to waive the requirement to install sidewalk along Moon Meadows Drive and South US Highway 16, adjacent to the Moon Ridge subdivision. Did you intend to be in the queue, Mr. Weifenbach?
Madam Chair, I'm 15 and 16, they're different, right? I mean,
Entirely different.
item 15 was the item that, item 15 was the sidewalk then?
We have representation here on item number 16. Item 15 is similar but entirely different project and different highway. Yes, it does. I believe the recommendation is to...
I'll yield the floor, Madam Chair.
Thank you. I believe the recommendation is to install the sidewalk along Moon Meadows Drive and agree to grant the waiver for the sidewalk along Highway 16. I have a motion to approve by Weifenbach, second by Estes. Any further discussion? Seeing none, all in favor?
Aye.
The motion does carry. Moving on to item number 16, which is a request from Fisk Land Surveying and Consulting Engineers, Inc. for Atlantis LLC and Northcott Hospitality for a variance to waive the requirement to install sidewalk along South I-90 Service Road and North Elkvale Road.
Second.
There's two pieces. Are you...
Yeah, maybe I'm missing
Okay.
something.
We might want to take these... Alderman Wright, what exactly is your motion to approve? Are you asking for to approve the waiver of right to protest for both locations? Okay. Motion is to approve the request for both locations.
Yes.
Do I have a second? I have a second by Roberts. Any discussion? Mr. Roberts, you care to have the floor, or was that a carryover? You have the floor, sir.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I find this kind of an interesting item. One is, and I do see that the staff requested to deny the one that's not even in the city of Rapid City, which is good. But the other piece, I did go out and drive it yesterday and take a good look at it. And my biggest concern was if we did put a sidewalk in there and we put a sidewalk into the railroad bridge, there is no way to move that sidewalk from that bridge to the other side of the bridge unless we want to make the owners build another bridge across the railroad, which I'm sure the railroad wouldn't allow. But so that only means the one thing, like Janelle said, that the people would have to go out into the highway to get on a sidewalk on the other side. So there is no way for pedestrian safety I could ever allow this sidewalk to go in there. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Roberts. Any further discussion? Motion on the floor is to approve this variance request. WARP, waiver of right to protest. Any further discussion? Alderman Weifenbach.
Madam Chair,
Yes, sir.
if I may, ask Ms. Fisk a question.
I believe it's Janelle Fink,
Ms. Fink, yeah.
Fisk Land Surveying.
Ms.
Thank you.
Fink,
That's
yeah.
okay, I answered to either.
She's the face, so I apologize. I just want to make sure we're on the right track here. This is what you're looking for, to not build the sidewalk.
Absolutely. Based on the criteria in the letter, we'd like to waive this requirement for sidewalk on the
Thank you.
service road and Elkville.
Thank you, Madam Chair.
Seeing no further discussion, all in favor? Aye. All opposed? Motion carries. Thank you, gentlemen. We are now at the end of our agenda. Could I have a motion to adjourn, please? Motion to adjourn by Weifenbach, second by Estes. All in favor? Aye. We are adjourned. Thank you.